All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a beautiful fall day. And I guess rumor has it there's a basketball game or something going on this evening. But we thank you for coming out to visit with us, counselors about your son or daughter's college planning. My name's Kyan Kingston. I'm one of the counselors here, and let me introduce my colleagues here. Jason Gosnell, you'll see him kind of wandering around. Yeah, he works with students, and so students are assigned by their last name there. So you'll see Jason walking around here. Megan Coghill as well. Rachel Hoke will be presenting this evening. And then Steve Patras in the back there. And then we also want to offer a special thanks to Jeff Smith. He's recording this evening's program, so I think Mr. Calvoto will be sending that out as well. So we will do a little mic exchange here before Rachel takes over in the last part of the program here. And then I want to also introduce our secretary, Penny Roll. Perhaps you've spoken with her on the phone, but Penny's been a great addition to our department. And so, as I maybe mentioned, or maybe your son or daughter mentioned after school today, counselors were in all of the American history classrooms today. And to just kind of pick up that discussion or be intentional with that discussion on juniors, what are you thinking about in terms of your plan after high school? And that's something that we will be asking them. We know you will be asking them over the next several months and next year and a half or more. About their plan, and so we know that some students have been thinking about life after high school for quite some time, and we also know that some students, this was we had a few wide eyes in the classroom of, oh my gosh, we're talking about this, and we know that students have a very busy week, a lot going on, but we want to, if your student is a little bit uncertain about what am I thinking about in terms of college, 2-year school, 4-year school? That's A-okay. Now's the time to kind of get going with that conversation. So seriously, no one is behind in that game, but we'll be pretty intentional going forward with that. And so as you know, Elkhorn South is certainly a college-going culture, college-going community. And I think, is this year 11 in terms of graduating class? Our first year we didn't have seniors. However, in any of those 11 years, when you look at school profiles, we have approximately 85% of our students going on to a 4-year college. Roughly 8 to 10% going on to a 2-year school. And then we have a certain number of students that are maybe entering the armed forces, perhaps entering the workforce, an apprenticeship program, or what have you. But certainly a college-going culture. We kind of did a little value exercise in the classroom today. And just as we were talking about the different types of schools out there, we're asking our students to list and think about what they value in a school. Whether that's being fairly close to home, and we had some students say, this is my school in California, or this is where I'm looking to go in Texas. This morning, I actually mailed a transcript to City, New York College in Brooklyn. So we have kids that apply all over the place. But students certainly, location is a big point. What region of the country do they want to live in? Do they feel comfortable there? What's the campus like? Here we are at a campus of 1,400, 1,500 students. Most students are saying, gosh, I want a school that's a lot larger than this. But it's certainly some kids want a school that's smaller than this. We talked public school, private school, and absolutely we were discussing programs. Are you interested in maybe a STEM program? Are you interested in business, or maybe a humanities? So that's definitely a big part of the discussion that we know that's going on at home and certainly at school as well. And I'm not glossing over cost because I'm a parent. I have one in college and 2 more that hopefully will be there. Cost is certainly a factor. It's important, but I would challenge you as parents, and we're asking kids, don't think of cost as the number one factor when it comes to selecting a school. We're not shopping, we're making an investment in, they're making an investment in their future. And so it's match over money, and that's one of the things that we want to kind of point out. And certainly we have, student athletes or prospective student athletes, but there's a variety of factors when a student is creating that list of schools to apply to. And that was another thing that we pointed out fairly early on today. Was we had some students saying, when do I apply? And that's not until the fall. The earliest we will see students apply is probably next September. The first deadline that we see any institution in the country is October 15th, and we will literally have less than 10 students apply to a school that has an October 15 deadline. So it's very few. So in other words, students have several months to craft that list. This was not the first time we're visiting with your students. We'll have our junior audit sessions that we'll talk about toward the end of today or this evening. And I know that we'll be visiting with these students several times in this process. But this is kind of our kickoff. So once your student figures out, okay, here's the 5, 6, 3, 4, whatever it may be, schools that I'm thinking about applying to, they will run into different types of admission policies. Some examples there's what we call open enrollment schools, traditional institutions, selective, and then highly selective schools. An open enrollment school, a student, by and large, with a 4-year open enrollment school, you graduate high school, you're in. And really that would be for Metro as well. I mean, Metro will take students who didn't graduate high school, but they would take remedial classes until they would move on to that. So anyway, an open enrollment school, you have that high school diploma, you are admitted. A traditional school, we have some, these are your state institutions, your regional institutions. They will have maybe some data requirements or some academic requirements like a certain ACT score they're advertising, or perhaps a certain GPA. You'll need to meet a core curriculum, and then, you'll probably be admitted to that institution. If you're meeting that criteria, you would be admitted. Some more selective schools, we will have students who apply to TCU or Purdue. I would call them in the selective category as well, and they're very good academic student, strong GPA, strong ACT score, and they might not get admitted to that institution. And so that would be kind of a selective school, and who knows, perhaps it's a space issue, perhaps it's student didn't complete their application in full, or maybe they made some mistakes in the application, but for whatever reason they were not admitted. And so that would be not a selective school, and not every school will offer admission. And it's one thing I mentioned to students today is you don't take it personal, and especially with these highly selective schools that maybe accept less than 20% of their applicants, or perhaps less than 10% of their applicants, and it's not the average student that's applying there. Some very strong students are applying and being denied admission or deferred admission, or maybe being waitlisted forever. But the point is, it's not a character reference. It's not a reflection of who they are as individuals. These colleges have very difficult decisions to make. They're pouring over thousands of applications. And so, it is difficult for a student to receive a deferment or a denial letter, but it's part of this process. And so, yes, we want students to kind of dream big, to dream of those highly selective game changer schools, but we also want them to apply to those safety schools as well. And we'll touch on that again in a little bit. it is a two-way street. Colleges or students are also, they're thinking of those criteria. And yeah, we're asking students, what do you value? Of those 8, 10 things, kind of rank those. But we also said, have your mom or dad rank those. I asked the kids earlier today, in terms of geography and location, draw a circle around Omaha. How many major cities does that include? How many states does that include? Now have your father or mother draw a circle around Omaha. It's probably going to be a little bit different, but those are the types of discussions we're having. So, students are making that list of schools. They're deciding what schools they will apply to, but then the colleges are also deciding, yes, you'd be admitted, and so on. This is not just something we randomly sat down and typed up and said, looks good, moving on. This information comes from the National Association of College Admission Counselors, known as NACAC. These are college admission counselors all over the country, and they do a questionnaire every year, a survey every year. So thousands of people are kind of offering their input of what does it take to get into our institution. And so essentially this is ranked in order. Every single school is saying, we're looking at the college prep curriculum. And so that's first and foremost. What are your grades in your core college prep classes? The 4 core and frankly, world language as well, as a 5th core. So they're looking at that. They're looking at the strength of the curriculum. How do they know the strength of Elkhorn South's curriculum? Because we tell them. Counselors will offer a school profile with every transcript credential that we send out. And that school profile will indicate, what our curriculum looks like, how our students are doing on AP exams, how they're doing on the ACT, but we tell them about our campus and about our school. And I would say the colleges in the Midwest, and probably over 90%, easily over 90% of our students are applying to schools in Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Minnesota, and South Dakota. Fair to say? Yeah, it's a large majority. However, those schools, so many applications are going out to these regional institutions. They know our curriculum. They know about our school. And so when it says chemistry on Elkhorn South's transcript, they know it's a real chem class. When it says honors pre-calculus, they know there's some it's a robust curriculum there. ACT score, we'll elaborate on that in a little bit. However, colleges will review that data, although probably should have put a little asterisk by that. The last 2 years, the class of 20 and the class of 21, increasingly ACT, SAT was an option for students. Not an option to take because they need to through the state of Nebraska. We need that's a data point that our state requires. However, colleges were seeing it as optional. And frankly, some their institutions, for example, in California, you've probably read, they're not reviewing ACT or SAT scores, a public school there. And I don't know how long that will continue. So it seems to be somewhat of a trend. I don't know exactly how that trend's going or where that will go. We just know that our students will take the ACT, and colleges, by and large, have told us, unless it's California school, public school in California, they will look at the ACT if our kids send it there. So we'll touch on that in a little bit. Perhaps your students will write a personal statement as part of a holistic admission process. Generally, the more selective the school, the more pieces of evidence, the more information students are offering as part of that holistic approach. What are your extracurricular activities? What do you value? Tell me about, you might write 1, 2, 3 personal statements. There are some institution, Brown just popped off, and popped into my head. I think Brown University has students write 7 real short personal statements. I think that's how it is there. So it varies on what students would offer that institution. And yeah, counselor and teacher recommendations may be part of that process as well. So colleges will be making decisions based on the 6th semester transcript. We know your students are busy. I'm in an AP history class this morning, regular history class this afternoon, and just seeing what's written on the walls and visiting with these kids. I have this quiz tomorrow. I have this paper due on Friday. I got this test. So we know your student is busy at home, and we recognize that. Very hard-working kids, and we're here to help answer questions as the stress of college kind of enters into the picture. But yeah, colleges will be making a decision based on the 6th semester transcript. Some institutions will require a 7th semester update. I just got an email today from a school saying we would like you to send this student's first quarter grades. So it just depends on the school. But by and large, a 7th semester update is not necessary. However, increasingly I've seen some of the regional institutions like UNL, Iowa State, KU, they'll say, yeah, if you have an update to your GPA, send it our way in January. I know that's a next year thing, but certainly what I'm getting at is that 7th semester, 8th semester, those grades matter, those classes matter. Next item here is we have so many students apply to the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Omaha, and Kearney that we want to kind of talk about their admissions. And if a student is meeting these performance requirements and the core course requirements at UNL, UNO, UNK, then they're also meeting them at KU, K-State, Mizzou, Iowa State, SDSU, you get the idea. So anyway, one new and exciting thing, I guess it's a couple years old, is when UNL said GPA, 3.0 GPA, you meet that criteria and you have met the core course requirements, you're automatically admitted, regardless of ACT score, regardless of class rank. In the classes today, I was like, hey, juniors, tell me about class rank. Is that a good measure here? And they're like, no, that's kind of hard to be in the top half. It is, it sure is. So we were pretty excited when UNL said, yeah, you have a 3.0 or higher, you're automatically admitted, or a 20 ACT, you're automatically admitted. And yes, I think we could all think of students who are outside the top half, maybe have a 2.9 GPA and a 19 ACT, and they're still attending the University of Nebraska school. It might take a little bit, we might write a letter, but we might offer a 7th semester update, but the messages still apply, even if you're not meeting a performance requirement. So they just meet one of those performance requirements, and then they must meet the core requirements there. A unit of study is a year of study, and so a student needs 16 units or in the following core, as well as foreign language to gain admission in the UNL system. When you add up the numbers on the left side, well, it's 15. What's going on here? UNL requires that 16th unit to be in math, which honestly, I could probably list 5 students, and this is year 7 for me. I could probably list 5 students who did not take a math their senior year. I have 80 seniors this year. All of them are taking math this year. So it's a thing. It's part of Elkhorn South culture that students don't take a year off of math before they go to college. So we have a fit for them. And if they're going to UNL, they have to take that extra core in math. UNO, Kearney, it can be in any one of those core areas. And our students routinely graduate with more than 16 core courses. Going back to that ACT, we mentioned, again, I don't know what direction this is going. A lot of schools want to see a student ACT. Why the test optional? I guess we're not going to get into huge discussion on that, but I've read a fair amount on it. I think my colleagues have read this, the same. I think it's about access. There were kids across the country that didn't have access to the ACT, didn't have access to test prep, particularly in the class of 20 or 21. Our kids have access in Elkhorn Public Schools. We've been in school. They're doing the curriculum. We offer the ACT. They will all take the ACT on April 5th. And so they will be prepared for the ACT. It will be a valid test score because of that. And so our students are prepared. They do well on the test. And so, our message come March is take the test, do your best, and then now let's look at your list of schools and see where we're sending the scores. Anyhow, they will do, on April 5th, they will do the ACT with writing as part of a state requirement. That's probably the only ACT they need to do with writing, just that once. So they wouldn't need to do ACT with writing every time. Generally, the test site for Elkhorn South students outside of the April 5th, they'll take it here at school. That is a state ACT. Every other ACT is a national ACT, same test, but they will generally take that at Elkhorn High School, and just when you're looking at that test center, look up Elkhorn rather than Omaha, 68022. 6 of the 7 test dates are offered at Elkhorn High School. If your student wants to take it in July, they can take it in Millard. I think Ralston offers it as well, but they can still take it in the metro area. And why do I mention ACT a lot? Because yes, every one of our students take it. Your son or daughter's had a lot of practice with it. If you recall, they took a full-length practice ACT last year in September. I think the latter part of September. It was a practice test. It was hard. Frankly, I don't think they were ready for it. But again, it was a practice. It was an experience. That was the big thing. It was an experience. Next Wednesday, they're taking a practice ACT again. They will be ready for this one. They've had over a year of curriculum, and so they'll be ready, and it's a great opportunity for our kids and then our teachers to also take that feedback of how they are doing on the different types of question in those core areas, and then work on some intentional test prep over the next few months, 3-4 months, as they get ready for that April 5 test. Any college across the country will take ACT or SAT. It doesn't matter. And so every once in a while, we find students that say, hey, the SAT is more suited for me. How do they know that? Maybe through the PSAT that they took as a sophomore or junior, where they're built for that test, if you will, or they're just more confident. Who knows? But they score higher, comparatively speaking, on the SAT. It may be an option for your student. I'd say year in and year out, we have about 20 students that take the SAT. Not a high number, but again, it might be the right fit for your student. And again, colleges will take either one. Just know that I think there's only 6 or 7 places across the state that offer the SAT. We have 3 in the metro area. Most of our kids go to Westside to take the SAT. Okay, this is kind of a quick summary slide. So we'll kind of buzz through this a little bit. One thing, though, that was a point of emphasis to our juniors is really starting later this month, next month, January, we're starting registration for juniors for their senior year schedule. So we asked them, hey, not only are you adding some schools to your list, particularly over the Thanksgiving holiday, have those conversations, but also start thinking about the classes you want to take. And for some of those kids, it's pretty darn easy. Like, well, here's my English. Yep, here's my math. But there might be some questions about science or other electives. But we'll start, that's part of our junior audit process. And so why does your student want to take a challenging schedule next year? Simply to mimic first year college. We have maybe half of our juniors are taking both AP English Language and AP United States History. They're probably taking chemistry. They're in 3rd or 4th year Spanish. They're busy kids. We know that they're hardworking kids. We know this. We want them to continue on with that curriculum next year. Don't take a break senior year. First off, again, you want to mimic what your freshman year in college will be. So you continue to take a math class, and we'll have kids that say, hey, I'm more of a math student, maybe I'm adding a second math class. Or maybe I'm adding a second science class or social studies class, we have those options. So we're doing that planning. It's so common for students to take 2 AP this year and then 3 or 4 their senior year. And it will be their best GPA. It just is. They're the most mature they've been as students, and they're the most ready that they've been academically. Or it might be your son or daughter's first AP class their senior year. Maybe it's an AP Psych or an AP Gov or an AP English or AP Math. Gosh, I could just keep rattling them all off. We have a lot of options for students their senior year. So yeah, you want to mimic that freshman year of high school, or college, I should say. You also need to report that schedule when you apply to college. And so if they see like, wow, you have an impressive record first 6 semesters of high school, but then your senior year is full of electives and you're not pushing yourself at all. Now, that's kind of a red flag. And so every college wants to see that senior year schedule. And so just continue what they're doing. And think about it, this year might be their first year in a varsity sport or maybe part-time job, I'm driving around, so they're an upperclassman. They know with the experience of this year what they can handle. We have kids a little bit nervous coming into senior year, like, can I do this 3rd AP? Well, if you did 2 last year, yeah, easily. Can I do this 4th AP? Well, yeah, you did 2 or 3 as a junior. Yeah, you can, because they've experienced it. And that's huge. College campuses, getting on campus, every college will be ready for your student come spring. Gosh, I hope so, right? That's juniors, is when they kind of roll out the carpet in the spring. They want to see juniors on campus. And so they will have junior programming. Over the breaks that we have coming up, great time to just kind of look at those calendars. A lot of times families register online or students register online for that programming. Every year, without fail, I'm talking with students on spring break. We're going here, going to have fun, but we're also going to visit, this campus or that campus. So part of the deal, and that's a great thing. We're encouraging students to right now formulate that list. 3 to 6 schools, that's a great number to have because you're mixing those academic fits, those matches to who you are as a student. Every college will tell you what the average GPA is of their incoming freshman class, average ACT score. They'll tell you, who their students are. They have a class profile. And for you all to read and for your student to say, yeah, that's who I am academically. But then they also want to, well, this is me socially, or I want to live here. That's part of the process. So you want to find those match schools. Certainly look at those reach schools or those game-changing dream schools, if you will, and look at what it takes to get your foot in the door there. Go visit those schools. We do have students admitted at those institutions every single year. And it's pretty exciting to get that feedback from them and have those conversations. But one really important thing is apply to the safety school. And I don't know if the safety is based on geography, where I got to stay close to home, or maybe it's based on economics. But they got to apply to that safety school. And that's hard for students to think about sometimes. But the safety school is very important. At least have one of those. And then as you're formulating that list, again, what does it look like when I apply in the fall? And again, counselors will be visiting with your student December, January, and maybe a little bit into February, as we not only register for classes, but then these are the conversations we're having when we're talking about the schools in their list and where are you going to go visit, and hey, what about this test prep you're thinking about? Speaking of test prep, real common question, what's the best one? The best one is the one that your son or daughter is going to do consistently, whether that's the free test prep in Naviance, and I've had kids just do those questions over and over and over. How'd you get this score on your science? Because I did the test over and over and over. And so there are more questions in Naviance, Rachel's going to show you that in a little bit, than any student can ever finish. And those are actual ACT questions, ACT prep questions. That's a free resource that our district pays for. Or maybe it's a class, maybe it's a book. And the curriculum here, though, is pretty darn useful as well. And so there's a lot of ways to prep for that. Activities resume, yes, your student will want to do an activities resume. It's a great idea for a junior to do. When should they do that? Spring break, maybe, over the summer. They might use it for a job interview over the summer, who knows. But Naviance has a good template, and so there are free templates at Education Quest website. Kids simply just type in, this is what I've done, academics, volunteer, here are my skills, and it formats it for them. My goodness. So it's a pretty good deal. And then that last thing, have conversations paying for college. Yeah, that's important. It is, and those are hard conversations. Every college will offer a number, the total cost of attendance. Here's what it'll cost: tuition, fees, books, how to get there, all of those things. They'll have that total cost of attendance and just compare those costs. But that's an important conversation. And I guess I wouldn't my recommendation as a parent, don't put it off until the fall, their senior year. Start having those conversations now. There are ways to pay for school, primarily those scholarships and other sources of financial aid. Those are senior year activities, and when we do our senior interview in the fall, we kind of dive into that pretty deeply. Lastly, before I turn this over to Rachel, is if your son or daughter is a prospective student athlete, just make sure that, so the NCAA Division I or II or NAIA, they would need to be deemed, if they're going to play intercollegiate athletics, they need to be deemed eligible academically by either the NCAA Eligibility Center or the NAIA. And so simply, and we have several students that have already signed up and registered. My recommendation here is don't put it off until the spring of your senior year. Then it gets pretty slippery. But the NCAA and NAIA need to see your 6-semester transcript and then 8-semester transcript after you graduate. And starting next year, I believe NCAA is requiring test scores again. The last 2 classes, they didn't require them. Our kids still sent them because it helped, I think, with the eligibility process. They reviewed them, but next year they will be reviewing that score. All right, well, we're going to do a little mic change here, and then Rachel will be showing you some resources, including Naviance.
Probably just for 1 or 2. Okay. So the last half of this presentation is really talking about what are the resources that your students have for career awareness, as well as college sources too as well. So the first one here is about the Omaha Exploring Program. It's back. It obviously left for a little while due to COVID, but this fall they're back up and running. And really what those programs are in the metro area, they're meeting anywhere from 4 to 10 times throughout the semester, either after school or during a Saturday, where they're getting a lot of one-on-one interaction with the certain programs. So Kiewit is a part of that. I know that Clarkson Nursing has a program for it. Tri-County Fire Corporation has one where you're really interacting with EMT, emergency response, and also Metro Community College has a culinary arts program. So definitely look at those each semester. They're back up and running, but definitely a great option for our students, especially in those career fields of interest, to get that one-on-one interaction with those programs. The next one is our career awareness program. It's headed by our career teacher that's for the entire district or for all 3 high schools, and her name is Dana Berman. And she runs our teacher cadet program. That's probably where our teacher cadet and internship. So when we're meeting with our juniors here in the next 3 months, if interning or being a teacher cadet is really important to them, we want to make sure we get on their schedule. And she'll be meeting with those students in May and in August too as well to help them get connected with a career interest that they have or the school that they'd like to connect with for teacher cadet. She also runs our Eat with an Expert program. So once a month, an expert comes in and talks over Zoom with all 3 high schools with our students during the class or during the day. And so last week was our industrial tech. It was a mechanical engineering, no, mechanical, gosh, I just forgot what it was. Oh, diesel technology. And so next semester or next month will be cosmetology. So every month there's something different. And when we send out our newsletters each month from administration, our counseling newsletters, you can see the different weeks or months that they have for Eat with an Expert. She also helps with job shadowing. So if you go onto her website, you see that link there on the PowerPoint slide, you can see all the different programs or community businesses that students can connect with and go during the school day or on a weekend or even when we have breaks, and they can go visit a business of their choice. The next one is Naviance. We're going to get on there here in a little bit, but that is the #1 tool our students have to look at colleges, look at different career options, look at their personality inventories that they've taken, look for scholarships when they're a senior, and it's a great tool for us as counselors to interact with students. So we're going to get on that here pretty soon. The UNL Explore Center, so they actually came out about 2 years ago to speak with us, or speak with juniors about what are some things that they do once a student's in college to help students pick a major or find a career of their interest. And so they give a lot of similar surveys that we will provide to students on Naviance here that I'll show you in a little bit. But their role is to help students pick their major, because they know after freshman year that over 70% of their students are going to change their mind. So that is a great option for students to already be looking on there right now, even if they're not going to UNL. But it provides a lot of survey tools to look for majors of interest. The last one is the College Board. And so they are the program that provides all of our AP testing classes as well as the SAT, but they have a great website that has lots of resources for colleges and careers. So I'm going to show you Naviance here. All of our students have a Naviance account. They get on there through their class links. There's no password needed, so your student for sure can show you this evening, even if you'd like, of how they access their Naviance account. So I'm going to get on there here real quick. And so today we went through several key areas that are important for junior year, and we kind of talked a little bit about some of the senior year items that will be important for them. But here on the home screen, one of the main ones here, make sure it's still junior, good, is if you go on the home screen all the way down to the bottom, kind of like kind reference that Naviance Test Prep has a free program that's just like ACT. So that's something that they can use here to go through many different tests. It's going to pull up. Okay, so if you see here on the left-hand side, students can take up to 6 practice tests. So obviously they're going to have a practice test next week on Wednesday, and they're going to get their results back where there's different themes of questions that they're going to get a color-coded chart. And so it's kind of nice every time you take a practice test to see what types of questions am I doing really well on and what ones are kind of popping up consistently that I'm not. And so if a student would like to take more tests, just kind of like Kyan said, you would spend hours on here. I don't know how you could ever get through every single item on this test prep, but there are 6 practice tests that students could take. But what's really, I think, very helpful for students is the practice piece. So every time a student takes the English test, for example, there's always going to be the conventions of standard English, questions in knowledge of language, and maybe production of writing. And so when you get your results back from that practice test, you notice, wow, production of writing was really low for me. You can practice those specific tests or questions and be more strategic about your study preparation. Same thing with math. Every time you take the math test, there's going to be a specific number of geometry questions. Essential skills is a very common one. We're going to see lots and lots of questions usually on each test, or maybe only a couple statistics. But every time you've taken the test, let's say geometry is really low, it's a great opportunity for you to strategically just study those types of questions. Same thing with reading and science. Another thing is flashcards. So there's lots of vocabulary where students can be practicing those as well. But also lessons. So just kind of like if you were to take like a John Baylor, they're going to go over just generalized test-taking strategies. What does ACT, or how do they ask specific questions? What are some different ways that they want you to answer questions? And so just those little general test-taking strategies that are very specific to ACT. There's also, let's say you've taken a lot of practice questions in certain areas, like here's the English category, and I'm just still struggling on conventions. I've taken a lot of questions and I'm not getting them right, but there's also little mini lessons that students could take in each of these categories. It's definitely worth looking through. Again, would take you a long time to get through them all. Just like Kyan said, it's really the time you take that's important for study prep. Students will tell me they love their Huntington tutoring, or they love the John Baylor, or the groups that they've gotten into after school, and it's really just the time that you take that's going to be effective for you with study preparation. And there's also games and things like that that students can play on here as well. So if we go back to the home screen, another area here at the bottom are the document resources. Not really going to click on that too much, but I know a really common one that Mr. Kingston will put up is dual enrollment. So anytime we see something that's really important for juniors and seniors for documents, we're going to put them in that category there. So when students have lots of questions, we can kind of refer them to those as well, or they can be looking at that. And I'll kind of come back up here to another important tab, which is self-discovery. And so since students freshman year, either during TA or during their personal finance class, hopefully, they've been taking some of these career assessments. And really what they are personality inventories or interest surveys, and it's really hopefully giving them an opportunity to see themes of what are some careers that are consistently popping up for me. If a student took them freshman year, they didn't really feel like they reflected on them, or they really weren't taking it seriously, we can definitely restart those for a student, except for maybe Strength Explorer. But I think as junior year rolls around, it starts becoming more relevant for them and they want to know. Or if I have a student that's really struggling to figure out what they want for their senior classes, I love to pull those up so I can ask, I can really help you if I know, what are some career interests you have. With the self-discovery, the careers tab also very correlates with that. So what that is so that if a student is seeing lots of careers that are of interest to them, they can also be watching videos. They can also be learning more of what are the pathways for that career, what is the college education that might be required for that. And so this is kind of an extension of the self-discovery surveys. They've condensed them a lot this year, so if your students have taken prior and they want to retake them, these are a lot quicker. They're a lot more user-friendly, I would say, than they have been in years past. The next tab that we spent a lot of time on today for students is our colleges tab. So one area that's really helpful here is kind of the advanced college search. So students, it's not going to let me extend. I may just log right back in. Okay. So if we're in the advanced college search, if students have many different colleges they would be open to looking at, and they don't know if they want to stay in Nebraska or go out of state, but they have maybe some specific college majors that they're interested in, they can do an advanced search that can look at multiple things that they're interested in. Or a student can also, so here you can kind of see the different themes that students could choose. admission requirements, some of the specific majors that they have. But you can also look at colleges through like a specific college lookup. When they kind of know where they'd like to go, but they're wanting to search for them. And so what happens is they start getting them into their lists here. And so I'm going to click on a school as an example. So if a student's interested in a school, it's really important for them to give it a heart, just kind of like on Instagram, because that then pings us to understand, hey, this student's interested in a school, and if they're going to come visit us, let's say in March, 22nd and 3rd hour, then we're going to send emails to students that they're going to be available. Creighton University is going to be here. And so it's really important that students are adding that, and that also then whenever they want to go look at their colleges really quickly, these schools are popping up. When they click on these schools, they're learning a lot about them in a very short period of time here. So admissions, you can see the acceptance rate, and kind of like Kyan said, anything below 10% is pretty selective, and right away you can kind of see already, then what are their admission requirements? Can they apply all year long? Are there very specific deadlines that a student has to meet? Are they going to be needing to use probably the Common App when they're doing their application? Maybe they're going to be needing some letters of recommendation or an essay. You can also see the application fee and some of the deadlines. I know a lot of students love looking here at the bottom. Who's been admitted at our school? And so if a lot of students have applied to any specific school, it'll show you kind of a scattergram here of, based on their ACT or their GPA, were they admitted or not. And so you can start seeing the really highly selective schools where there's going to be lots of little X's. So that's usually something that students are quite interested to see. Where have our students from Elkhorn South? How many have been admitted and how many have not? Some other things you can learn here. The specific majors that they have, and a lot of students spent time on that, so you can start seeing and scrolling down of all the different majors that they provide. Kind of the class ratio of the size of the teachers, the campus size. You can also see the cost of the schools. So lots of things that you can learn here just by clicking on the schools, and then they always have the link to the school itself at the bottom. Also in this colleges tab here, this is going to be really important for mainly seniors, but we're going to be talking a lot about scholarships here in the fall. But as the year goes on in the semester, for sure by December, we're going to have lots and lots of scholarships in that portal. So that's really important for students to be looking, for sure, for seniors for this year. Also, you're going to be transitioning the colleges that I'm thinking about to senior year to colleges that I'm applying to, and that'll be really helpful for us too as counselors, so we can see when you're applying and what your deadlines are. But you can also be requesting your letters, especially if you need it for Common App or scholarship. That's where a lot of that will be housed. Another important thing here on the About Me tab, kind of like Mr. Kingston had referenced, Naviance had changed their activities resume, and it's much better now. It would be too much to kind of show you an example here, but if you start clicking on it, you can be adding all of the activities, leadership opportunities that you've had. This great thing to do this summer or the spring, because when the fall hits, there's just a lot going on. So great one to get out of the way there. Also in the About Me tab, students will ask often, what is my class rank, especially for admissions purposes or scholarships. So when it is their account, they'll see some of those key items there. Sometimes there's as well will be their ACT scores. I don't know if they're consistently always up there, but every time they're taking an ACT, it'll show it. Maybe not for this one. We'll kind of see those two as well. But that will be important for students to be looking on their ACT account because they have to be the ones that are sending their scores. We as counselors cannot send those, but it is kind of nice to look at them for like scholarship purposes if you can't remember which specific score was each one. But again, not always are these going to be uploaded on here. So yes, just to wrap up, we will be talking with your students in the next 3 months individually, mainly about their senior schedule, but any of their goals after high school. And so I think the best thing that students can be doing right now is just getting on their Naviance account, studying for ACT, and starting to put some of those colleges into that colleges I'm thinking about. So, yeah. Anything else you can think of, Kyan? Okay. Well, thanks for coming out. We're going to be here for a little bit to answer any questions you have specifically, or you can also email us too as well. But yeah, thanks for coming. Did I show it off correctly?